we had this little thing called a solar eclipse. We bought little glasses, right? We bought them on Amazon like everybody else. And I found the little sticker thing that's supposed to be on the glasses that says, these are safe for your eyes. And then I found a story saying, hey, you actually got to test these because it's a printed label that anyone can print.
Mine's is homemade.
Mine's a ship from a third world country named Homa Made, so I can legally print from homemade on the pre-packaged package.
On this episode of ResiWeek, we talk destination outdoors at CEDIA and US Cybermarks. All this and more on this episode of ResiWeek. This is ResiWeek, episode 431, Conflicted Aspirations. Welcome to this episode of ResiWeek. This is your weekly roundup of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matt D. Scott for AVNation.tv, and this week I'm pleased to be joined by two of my good friends. First, we have Avi Rosenthal. He's a partner at Bluesalve. How you doing, Avi?
Hello, Matt. How are you today? Thanks so much for having me on.
Thank you for being here. I'm doing great. Then we have Patrick Norton. He's a contact specialist over at CTI. How you doing, Pat?
I am full of mirth and good cheer and about to horrify many of my coworkers here in the marketing department.
Fantastic. I love it. All right, gentlemen, we're going to kick this off with a story that comes to us from CE Pro. Destination Outdoors is returning to CEDIA Expo 2024. We all know and love it. It's 24,000 square feet outside that features solutions from Coastal Source, Draper at Home, Just Video Walls, and potentially a couple more. It's a big old open space outside the Denver Convention Center where they're going to showcase a bunch of their outdoor products. Pat, I'm going to start with you on this one, actually. I am conflicted, which probably should be the title of this episode, but I am conflicted on this space for a couple of reasons.
This space meaning outdoor AV period, or
we're going to go with that answer because the other one gets me in way more trouble.
And this coming from a guy that spends lots of time outdoors too.
Yeah. Oh no, I spend tons of time outside. But the Destination Outdoors is a great outdoor showroom, right? It's showing some really cool products from Coastal Source, from Draper, from Just Video Walls. But the majority of these are not obtainable solutions for the average integrators customers. What's the not what's the benefit of showing this off to the CEDIA community who politely again has a hard time selling some of these solutions to the majority of their clientele? What's the benefit?
I think one of the big challenges, I mean, when you look at any trade show, right, there's the bulk of the trade show, which is the bulk of the industry, and then you start getting separated off into rooms or areas, right? I'm sure there's, a Z-Wave pavilion. I got to throw that out there. I'm sure There is a, high-end audio. There's the, there's different areas that get set up. Some of them, I've always been fascinated, whether it's like the Consumer Electronics Show or CEDIA or, I can think of one from the SEMA show, which is the car industry's version of CES or CEDIA or Infocom, and where you're in a booth and you think this is a bunch of companies that have a lot of money and want to have their products displayed in a fantastic environment, right? And and that's just one of the natures. I mean, I giggle, right? Because for the podcast I do, which is home theater and audio, do we have people who go to Control 4? Absolutely. That's like 1%, 2%, 3% of the people that are listening. And not because they aren't interested, but because it's more than they can afford ever. Period. Yeah. Right. So I giggle, in this case, like a couple of speakers we were talking about are absolutely gorgeous. They're stunning, right? They're, you were saying they're up 7,500 a pair, which is almost double what they were 2 years ago or something like that. And there's a lot of stuff going on here, right? One thing is, like you pointed out, that you can do some of the outdoor displays. Will someone pay $5,000 to be able to watch a football game or a soccer game or a whatever game, at the pool in Miami? Absolutely. Right. But they can afford a house in Miami. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? In other cases, I look at the stuff, you mentioned, I think one of the projector companies, and it's a projector bright enough to work in the yard in the sunshine, is essentially a flamethrower, right? How many lumens are you talking about? Are you running, we got a 240 volt. Well, we got actually three 240 volt lines running out there because I wouldn't do single phase to a home. But I exaggerate a lot. But, a lot of, sometimes there are just going to be areas at a trade show, much like the high roller section of the casino, where there's some fancy stuff that is aspirational, and maybe over time, more of the industry will come along. I'm still amazed. I think the first time I ever saw lighting set up, in someone's yard where it was coordinated design and pulled into their home automation system was probably 30 years ago now, and I still feel like I'm waiting for more than a house here or there to actually have a decent outdoor AV system. And it's funny because the technology's out there and it can even be affordable, but still more often than not, it's like two speakers bolted to the side of the house and it is what it is, hooked into the Sonos system. Sometimes it's good. Sometimes it's like, I feel like it's one of those areas of the industry where to make things that will survive outdoors is so expensive to begin with. It makes it problematic. Just the barrier to entry is so high, if that makes sense.
Avi, I appreciate what Patrick's saying. I think there's a level of affordability that does exist, right? In outdoor AV, it's there. Outdoor lighting, it's there, right? Heck, the landscape companies
Absolutely.
are doing outdoor AV and outdoor lighting, and they're definitely not putting in the quality or the longevity of the products that our industry typically uses. My question with this is, where's the delta between, like going to a car show, right? And you can walk around Ford and GM and Nissan and Honda and, everybody else,
Sure.
and even Mercedes and BMW. But then you get to the one section that it's all roped off with velvet, and it's got maybe the Rivian or the, Ferrari and Lamborghini and everything else. Oh yeah. The super high end where you don't get to go sit and sit in those cars, right? You get to look at them from a distance.
Right.
What's the delta between exposing our industry to some really, really cool, in this case, outdoor products, and giving dealers and integrators maybe something to aspire to?
Well, and I think that's the key word, right, Matt, is aspirational. I mean, we're showing off technologies that the integrators can aspire to, that the integrators can talk about, so that when they do have an opportunity come across their path, they know about the products and they know that they can where to find them, what the brands are, who the reps are, meet the right people. There's lots of examples like that even on the show floor. I mean, look at what Macintosh showed last year. They had their $1 million home theater. All right, how many integrators are going to be able to install a $1 million home theater? Yet it was
install many, sell few.
There you go.
Yeah.
But it was a huge success for the guys at Macintosh because now people equate their brand with something that high end, right? They understand that you can aspire to a Macintosh setup of that kind of caliber when you bring in the right partners. And I think the outdoor space, I mean, look, they're brave enough just doing outdoor space in Denver in September, right? You may actually get to see the weatherproofing very effectively. You got a 50-50 shot of snow happening that first week of September in Denver. But I also do think it's aspirational. It is the same way at the kitchen and bath show. There are the Italian appliance manufacturers right alongside the GE and the Samsung and the LGs because of the fact that there are certain designers and certain decorators and certain installers that are walking that show floor at KBIS, and they see this stuff and, someday I want to have a Gaggenau, or I want to have a Wolf, or I want to have, one of the Italian, appliances that, it's a Honda Accord sitting on my kitchen floor, but it's a really cool product. And I think that that's the idea here, is to help the dealers get educated, because they never know what the next opportunity is really going to put forth.
Just to play devil's advocate, is somebody that watched CES turn from an industry show into a sort of revenue source for CES more so than something that actually serves the industry. Avi's laughing.
Like you're going to get me in such
Just
trouble.
so everyone knows, Patrick said it, not Avi.
But there was an interesting moment, right, at CES this year. It started years ago, where you would see something there, and maybe it's interesting, maybe it's technology, maybe it's, but you would be looking at it and you would realizing this is a revenue opportunity to take advantage of the existing audience, right? And in some cases, revenue opportunities, this is maybe, is this is this a bunch of vendors that came to CEDIA and they all happen to be high-end vendors because they wanted to really demonstrate, demonstrating this gear outside, because it's impressive to hear a lot of there's a bunch of the much more affordable brands where they have things set up in their booth inside of CEDIA. And that was the first time I ever thought to myself, I could have this in my yard and not be irritated by it, right? Because I like music. Yeah, this is kind of like, okay, I can put music in the bushes and it'll be exciting and I can walk around and I can hear it and I'm not dealing with some stupid Bluetooth radio. And it was something where I could actually afford it without my wife burying me in the backyard like a hamster. But to actually demonstrate this stuff outside, you can't see some of the laughter if you're listening to the podcast right now.
Really.
But it's, I can also see these vendors being like, we will pay what it takes to demonstrate our products outside, because for anybody in there, if they are a dealer, they can be like, look, I saw it in Denver outside, bright sunshine, blue sky, 7,000 feet. It looked amazing. And that's something that's probably, is it expensive to be outside? Are they restricting it to a first group of vendors? Or these vendors that know each other? You never really know what goes into crafting a pavilion in a lot of situations. It's either super obvious, or you're always kind of like, what brought these together? What Machiavellian backstory can I put together and then post on Reddit to drive everyone insane?
Well, and Pat, you're absolutely right. I mean, clearly the idea here is that the show is expanding and it's offering more services and more opportunities. Look at Commercial Integrator is part of the show now as well. And going back to your CES comment, I think that the right way to look at CES is also a much more future show these days. It's not about what's coming out this year. We talk about CES in terms of what's coming out in 5 years now. Used to be CES was all about, hey, show me the great stuff that I'm going to be able to buy in the next 12 months. And you're right, CES has sort of lost a little bit of that short-term focus and is now looking much more long-term. But I think CEDIA has gained in reputation because of it, because now the Samsungs and the LGs and the Sonys and these guys do come to CEDIA with the opportunity to show you, hey, this is what we're announcing this year. This is the latest 8K, or this is the latest speaker system, or this is the latest version of the gadget, the gizmo, that you'll be able to sell right away and you'll be able to make money on right away. And I think, again, the outdoor project has to do with this idea of, hey, it's September, season's ending. Let's get you educated so that next season you're ready to go come springtime, with all of these really cool ideas for outdoor spaces.
All right, gentlemen, let's move on to a story that comes to us from The Verge and Jennifer Toohey. I believe I said that right. She's talking about a lot of different things in here, but specifically one cybersecurity mark to rule them all. The FCC has approved implementing its new cybersecurity labeling program for consumer IoT devices in the U.S. Both programs are voluntary. The CSA label doesn't compete with the U.S. Cyber Trust, but the goal is to make it so that manufacturers can go through one certification process to sell in all major markets. We've talked about this a couple times on the show, but because we've got Avi here, we wanted to talk to him about it again, just because it's such a fascinating program that they're trying to get rolling here. Avi, because this is voluntary, what are the real conversations about this program being talked about by manufacturers who are likely to use something we talked about kind of pre-show, are going to view like the car seat? It's voluntary until nobody wants to use it, so we're going to make it mandatory. The path here is likely to make this a mandatory thing to sell in the US. What's the internal conversation that manufacturers are having about utilizing a cyber trust mark?
And Matt, that's a really great question. It's something that the guys in the industry, the organizations in the industry are really struggling with. So let's start from a very high level. So obviously everybody knows that data is the new oil, right? Data is where it's at. Everybody wants a piece of your data. Everybody either wants you to pay for your data or they want to pay you for your data. But either way, it's all about data. Okay. So now, because it's worth something, there are nefarious players out there that may want to take your data. Okay. So the federal government got a whole group of people, and I'm condensing like 2 years worth of conversation into 30 seconds.
Perfect.
They got a whole bunch of manufacturers and organizations together, and they said, all right, we know that we're going to have this problem. How do we get in front of this problem for once? Instead of being reactive, we want to be proactive. And so industry has said, great, you want to do this? The best way to do this is to communicate all of the things that people are worried about a specific connected device right on the label of the device. And so they've come up with what I call the nutritional label of cybersecurity. And it's a label that looks very similar to the light bulb label or the nutritional label on a product, gives you a couple technical terms, defines them, and then also gives you this neat little QR code where you can get more information. So from a manufacturer perspective, it's, okay, I got to put a label on everything. That's the easy part. The hard part is, where do I get the information that goes on the label? The same way my can of Pringles has got to figure out how many calories of fat and how many calories of salt and how many calories, right, are in that can of Pringles. We as an industry are going to have to determine things like S-bombs and M-bombs and all kinds of other things that are relevant to how we move data around, how long we're going to support the product, how long we're going to keep it online, what happens if it doesn't go online, where do we get updates for it? So the hardest part here is understanding that. What am I going to put on the label? The good news is it's voluntary. That's a good thing. That means that we as an industry get to sort of support it. Since Jennifer wrote her really great article, other organizations have signed on as well. IOXT has signed on. Z-Wave Alliance has signed on. There's a whole bunch of organizations that have said, yep, we're raising our hands. We're going to take advantage of this as well. And everybody's going to have the same rules, right? Because that was the other concern, is that if one organization does it one way and a different organization does it another way, whose label goes on the box, right? No. I can see Pat is just, he's like going to shoot himself.
No, but it's a legitimate concern, right?
It is. And it's a very legitimate concern. But the rules are being formulated now. I would welcome integrators. You guys are on the front lines. You are going to use these labels, and at some point you're going to hand off these labels to your consumers, because your consumers are going to start to ask you about the trustworthiness of the products you're putting in their homes. And when CNN and MSNBC and Fox News and everybody else starts reporting on the fact that this label is a big deal, the same way they did with other labels that went on consumer products, your customers are going to come to you and say, hey, where's my cyber trust mark? Which level cyber trust does this product adhere to? And so you as the integrator don't have to put the label on the box, but you certainly need to know the importance of that label, and you need to know how to answer the question from Mr. or Mrs. Homeowner, hey, do I have a cyber trust mark on this product? And if I don't, why don't I? And if I do, where's the label? And I think that's really where the rubber is going to meet the road. Crestron is going to jump over this, and Control 4 is going to jump over the hurdles to get here instantaneously, right? They already do this kind of stuff. We're concerned with the little companies that are just coming out. Any company that's been in networking, more than 6 months already attains the goals of cyber trust. So it's not a question of us putting more onerous rules and regulations on our industry. This is more about making sure that the consumer knows that we've taken that time and put in that investment, and now proving to them that we've done so. So don't look at this as big government is now going to rule the world. Look at it as big government wants to celebrate what you've done as an industry and the accomplishments you've made in cybersecurity and in cyber trust, and they want the consumer to know about it.
That's fantastic, Patrick. Let me ask you kind of a follow-up question. And I appreciate everything you said, Avi. That was the best overview I've heard of this yet. Where I get concerned is those little companies. And here is why. A couple of, 2 months ago, we had this little thing called a solar eclipse that went all across. It came right over top of essentially where I live. So we got to see it in totality, I believe is how it's phrased, right? We drove 30 minutes south, sat in a baseball field, and watched it go dark for 3 minutes. To do that, we bought little glasses, right? We bought them on Amazon like everybody else. And then I saw a PSA because I did my research and I found the little sticker thing that's supposed to be on the glasses that says, these are safe for your eyes. And then I found a story saying, hey, you actually got to test these because it's a printed label that anyone can print. So here is my question. I think this is fantastic. I think when they implement this, if companies jump on board, it's going to be great. My concern is that there's going to be a bunch of companies that are selling on Amazon and eBay. And will they make inroads into our industry? Maybe not, but they're going to be on the customers' networks. And they're probably, possibly, maybe going to have a false US cyber check. What can be done to mitigate fraud with this? Is there anything?
That's one. That's what a vicious, group of attack lawyers is for. I'm saying that tongue in cheek, but I'm also not saying that tongue in cheek, right? There's a bunch of steps here. Like, first of all, is somebody spent a lot of time with security professionals. The fact that anybody's taking this seriously is great. We used to joke on a podcast I did for a long time that, eventually, nobody wants light bulbs that you can hack. And it was kind of a running joke until somebody actually literally used a IoT light bulb as a vector for attack into a network. And that went from being like a reliable, cutesy kind of, but serious moment to, phrase I can't say on a family-friendly podcast. They literally became a vector for attack. We can argue about how secure your home network needs to be, how secure your devices need to be, but there's so many layers on this, right? There are some of the most dangerous botnets. Some of the most destructive, DDoS attacks have been built because somebody figured out there was a brand of camera from a manufacturer or group of manufacturers that was sold under a whole bunch of different labels. And because nobody really does, they get the widget, they label the widget, they put their logo on the software for the widget, they sell it either through industrial channels or, Costco or, Amazon or eBay or whatever it is. And then somebody figures out a flaw. And then suddenly it turns out if you have 350 or 450 or 1 million security cameras all throwing a little bit of data at a server at the same time, you can take it down. And this is a weird thing to talk about, right? But there has been so little concern in so many areas. I can see why Z-Wave jumped on this in a second, because you guys do serious stuff with serious companies in serious situations, right? Mm-hmm. It would be a no-brainer. And if they are going to make this work, then they are going to have to enforce it so that if people are printing fake labels, that they go after them and they make them remove the labels or go out of business. And the idea that they put in there is that there's going to be multiple layers, right? There's the label on the box, there's the QR code inside. It's going to take some due diligence by the end users wherever they are. It's going to take some due diligence by the companies, and I like the idea, but I think what happens is, this is one of those things where I don't particularly care if, the high-res logo is on a set of headphones. It means they were produced more than a wide band of sound, right? Which is what headphones are supposed to do. If anybody wants to argue with me about that, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter at Patrick Norton and tell me why I don't understand why the high-res logo is important. I look forward to an illuminating conversation. But in this case, right, this is
.com.
This is going to be great, guys. But this is also one of those things where it's like, okay, it's like the crew behind Matter, and this is some of the biggest and most prestigious corporations in the world. So if they are working together on this and they want to make this a legit thing, they certainly have the resources to do so.
And there are examples, Matt, because it is important to note there are plenty of examples of industry-wide testing procedures and applications and labels and things that get applied to both consumer and industrial products every day. And yes, there are fake UL and ETL labels out there right now. But both the UL and ETL, Intertech, these guys do a really good job of policing them and finding them and rooting them out. And cyber trust is going to be governed in a similar way, right? Where we as manufacturers are going to root out the fake ones, everything. By the way, you can't just put your own cyber mark on your own product. It does have to go through a third party. So there is a third party testing facility and a third party sort of stamp of approval, because as we learn in engineering all the time, right, the worst thing that can be done is the engineer does his own testing because he puts on his own blinders, and that's the end of that.
So many bad jokes I'm not making.
Yeah,
right
it's
now.
a whole yeah. Thank you, Pat. I appreciate that. I'm happy to be your straight man, by the way. I can just keep feeding them to you, and we'll go from there. But no, but CyberMart, there will be specific rules and regs surrounding who does the testing, how it gets tested, who's allowed to do the testing, and things like that. And then similar to a UL or an ETL or one of the other marks out there, there will be a database someplace on the interwebs, right, where you'll be able to look up, I have a Netgear, WAX, yada, yada, yada. And, which cyber was done and which lab did it and how was it done and all of that. So you can verify it.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that was funny is if, go back with me back to the days when people still carried around cameras that used SD cards. Fake SD cards used to be a huge problem.
Huge problem.
Yep.
And it became like, don't buy them online. Okay, you can buy them online from a trusted vendor. Don't buy them on Amazon. Okay, you can buy them on Amazon if you buy them from an Amazon fulfilled store and not from, what I mean? And and there were, the SD card association came out with tools to identify it. It became, the subject of people talking on Reddit and on the internet and on social media. So I feel like if the consumers care and the companies care, they have a habit of reinforcing each other in chasing down problematic companies or problematic devices, because nobody wants to go through like, okay, I bought all these secure devices. I want a secure home. I don't want, one device. I don't want, I don't want to pay money to put a hole in the armor I am building around my Internet of Things. I won't get into the whole, like, all of the existing devices you already have that will not be secure.
It's retroactive. So there's that.
Yeah, well, there are online updates. I mean, no.
Well, but that's one of the things I love about the idea for some of the, things that are being proposed. I think this may have been the FTC one where they were like, okay, not the FCC, but the QR code is the idea that you can scan this and find out if it is still a supported product. Is it still an updated product? Because the number of, I'm thinking of a router in particular a friend of mine had, and he's like, well, it's a router. What can go wrong? And I'm like, it's a piece of consumer electronics that has been updated once since it was released 4.5 years ago. Do you really think the code was perfected when they released it, or that the company just got it out the door and is done? Your level of cynicism can vary, but it's I always find it fascinating. Like one of the things I do if I'm looking at certain products is I look, do they update? Have they updated their older products?
Right.
I don't want to buy a sophisticated AV receiver and find out that they've never fixed any of the problems with their old sophisticated AV receivers.
Exactly.
So
do updates and brick everything,
That's a topic for another day, Avi, my friend.
How about this? If you have a Sonos product, do not update to the new app yet. Please pause, save yourself emotional trauma and suffering.
Oh, you see, he can go there.
He can, yeah. We recorded this on Monday. So if you're listening to this on Wednesday, I would argue still probably maybe don't update that. All right, we are going to leave it there before I deal with legal. Thank you both so much for joining us. Patrick, if people want to connect with you, follow your podcast, learn more about CTI, etc., where can they do that?
Well, CTI.com is the website for CTI. We're a global integrator with 36 offices in the United States. I work at CTI. You can reach me at Patrick Norton, and that'll give you links to podcasts I do outside of the glorious ResiWeek.
Fantastic.
Sorry, I had a breathy moment there. My apologies.
No, I appreciate it. I would have been concerned if you stopped at 4 gloriouses, but 5 was right on the money.
Right on the money.
Right on the money. If people want to connect with you, learn more about Bluesalve, where can they do that?
So best place is bluesalve.com, BLUESALVE.com. And of course, you can find me on all of the regular social media places as well. So, but please reach out, and I'm very excited. Let me tell you, the Cyber Trust thing, it's going to be a big deal, Matt. We should do another program. Yeah, I can't wait for the first product to come out.
Well, let's set something up. That'll be fantastic. All right. For myself, again, thank you for joining us. If you'd like to connect with me, you can find me on Twitter or X at Matt D. Scott and most other social platforms. But more importantly, please visit AVNation.tv, where you'll find this show as well as a wide variety of other shows with all the verticals that we cover. When you visit the website, please take a moment to check out our supporters. We are extremely thankful for their support and ask that you check them out as well. Thanks again for watching. That's all the time we have for this episode of ResiWeek,
the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.